This is The Process Shot. I'm Michael. I'm stuck in a haunted movie theater, and I've seen Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, a newish period comedy from director Anthony Fabian. Beginning in late 1950s England, it follows Ada Harris, a widow and cleaning lady who, upon seeing a Christian Dior dress owned by a client, makes it a personal goal to buy and wear such a dress of her own. With a little bit of luck and a hefty amount of work, she gets the money and travels to Paris and the house of Dior. But there are still a number of obstacles along the way, most of all the expectations set against her upon her arrival, given her social status compared to other buyers. Thankfully, she has more than enough determination to make her way through this world, and an equal amount of kindness that she's able to give back to those she meets throughout her visit to the city. This story isn't particularly loaded with material, keeping its focus pretty low to the ground and almost entirely upon Mrs. Harris and her newfound friends, rather than try to add any greater theming or allegory to ongoing events. I mean, there are more than a few signs of the world around them, eventually tying into the main story, but not at all taking away from Mrs. Harris's point of view. The events in her life do feel a bit contrived, as though the world around her is changing itself to make sure that she has a happy ending, but it's still told in such an endearing manner that you really can't help but hope for the best for her and others. It's helpful that the story is character-driven, with plenty of time set aside to develop just about everybody, no matter how minor a role they play. Their individual arcs may be just as formulaic as the main story, but it's all still delivered with such a wholesome tone that you either don't notice it yourself or don't care when you do. Pretty much every moment of the story exudes some optimism and hopefulness, even if doing so kills any sense of stakes or suspense for the characters. Still, this ends up being a story where you wouldn't want that to be the case in the first place, so I'd say that it all works out. Anyways, the technical aspects of the film also maintain the more grounded nature of the story by keeping things on a relatively realistic level. There are a few interior set pieces here and there, of course, but they're still detailed enough that they blend right in with the exteriors, which are themselves spacious and full of life. Cinematography in general frames everything rather well, though it does lean towards practicality and flatness over style, though there are still a few shots here and there that more clearly emphasize Mrs. Harris's feelings. One of the more prominent being during the initial reveals of potential dresses she can buy. Speaking of which, while fashion itself doesn't actually factor too much in the actual story, there's still no shortage of detail and flair within these costume designs. Not only in the Dior dresses, but in the casual outfits that characters wear, giving more to their characters beyond their dialogue. Much of the film's technical elements are also used more practically and in service to the characters, and that ultimately seems to have been the main idea in all of this. This story is less about a woman going to Paris to buy a dress, and more about a woman who comes to Paris and makes the lives of those she meets all the better. It's only obvious that such a story would rather put its attention on these characters, and it does this with a very uplifting and wholesome tone that almost immediately pulls you into the world of the film, simply because it's too welcoming to push you away. Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris. Anthony Fabian, 2022. 4.5 stars. I definitely recommend giving it a watch. That's it for me. If you like this review, leave a like. If you have something to add, leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. I really haven't seen any movie in a while that was just brimming with as much positivity as this one. Either I need to watch more movies, or I've just been watching the wrong ones. Probably both.